Alien girl pulls human from the reactor tunnels, but human sees his future wearing her colors. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Hot air shimmered inside the reactor tunnels as Ethan Cole crawled through the narrow steel throat of the station's power grid, his breath fogging the inside of his cracked visor. Warning lights pulsed in a sharp red rhythm, each flash throwing shadows that twitched along the pipes like living things. The gauges on his handheld scanner jittered between numbers that made no sense, a nervous shake that told him the system was overheating again. He wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his glove, the smell of warm copper and burnt insulation hanging in the air. He muttered to himself, a habit he picked up after too many night shifts alone down here. Just tighten the conduit, Ethan. Easy fix. Should have been home an hour ago. The metal beneath him trembled, a faint vibration traveling through his knees. A distant hum deepened, turning into a low groan that rolled through the tunnel like a warning. He felt it before he heard it, the dull pop of a pressure valve giving out somewhere behind him. A gust of superheated air rushed past, rattling the grates. Ethan jerked back, heart hammering. His flashlight flickered, then steadied. Not great, he whispered. The exit hatch was 20 feet ahead, a square of safety at the end of the cramped duct. He started toward it, boots scraping on the metal rungs, when the tunnel shuddered again. This time the vibration was sharper, like something slamming shut. A heavy clang echoed through the shaft as the emergency bulkhead sealed, the blast door locking him inside with a hiss. No, come on. Ethan pushed against the hatch wheel, but it didn't budge. The heat climbed higher, beads of sweat forming along his hairline. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of ozone. He tried the comm on his wrist. Static. A second passed, then another. The tunnel lights flickered overhead. He forced a shaky breath, trying to keep panic from crawling up his throat. He backed away from the sealed hatch, searching for another panel, another exit, anything, when a round metal grate above him clanged open. A shadow leaned in, framed by the glow of violet emergency strobes. She wasn't human. He could tell by the cool lavender tint of her skin and the band of shimmering silver markings along her jaw. Her eyes, bright and focused, swept over him with an intensity that cut through the rising heat. A reinforced cable dropped beside him, the hook bouncing lightly near his boot. Her voice carried calm authority, steady even in the rising rumble of the tunnel. Ethan Cole, take the line. Now. He didn't recognize her, but she said his name like she'd practiced it. He grabbed the cable as the floor vibrated again. She braced herself above, muscles shifting under the pale metallic fabric of her uniform, and hauled him upward with surprising strength. The moment his shoulders cleared the opening, cool air washed across his face, a stark contrast to the heat below. He gasped, coughing as the grate shut beneath them, sealing off the tunnel's glow. She steadied him with a firm hand on his arm. Up close she seemed taller, composed even as alarms wailed in the distance. A crest the color of deep violet gleamed on her chest plate, colors he didn't recognize but couldn't look away from. She met his gaze with steady focus. You were seconds from collapse down there. Stay close. Ethan nodded, breath still uneven. He didn't know who she was or why she'd been above that hatch, but as the corridor lights cast her crest in a muted glow, he felt something unexpected, like the future had just shifted, tilting toward her colors without asking his permission. Ethan steadied himself as the cool corridor air settled over his skin, his heartbeat still racing from the climb out of the reactor tunnel. The alarms continued in the distance, steady pulses of orange and violet light reflecting off the metal walls. The alien woman kept her hand on his arm a moment longer, just enough to make sure he was not going to collapse. Then she released him with precise restraint, her expression unreadable. Ethan tried to catch his breath. You knew my name, he managed. She did not look away as she answered. Saris Valrin. Station security. Your identification tag broadcast your location when the reactor pressure spiked. Her tone was calm, but carried something else beneath it, something Ethan could not quite place. She turned and began walking, expecting him to follow. He did. The corridor hummed with energy, the overhead panels flickering as the station's power rerouted. Ethan felt the faint vibration under his boots, a gentle thrum that told him the system was trying to stabilize, not entirely succeeding. Saris moved with controlled precision, each step measured, her silver markings catching the emergency lights. Ethan glanced at her crest again, the deep violet insignia etched into her chest plate. It shimmered like cooled metal. "Thank you," he said finally, voice low. She did not slow down. "It was my duty." "Still," he insisted. "You pulled me out of there when the bulkhead closed. You could have sealed the level and waited for the vent cycle." For a brief moment her eyes shifted toward him, gold irises reflecting a distant glow from the wall panels. "Leaving someone behind is not my habit." They reached a junction where the corridor split into 3 paths. Saris raised her wrist device, its surface projecting a thin sheet of warm light. Ethan saw his vitals displayed for a second before she closed it. "You are overheated and still experiencing stress response," she said. "You need to sit for a moment." Ethan laughed under his breath. "You just pulled me out of a tunnel that felt like the inside of a toaster. Sitting sounds great." She guided him toward a maintenance alcove, a small recessed space with a metal bench and a humming coolant pipe running along the wall. The cool air rolling from the pipe washed over him like relief. Ethan sat, letting the temperature drop piece by piece. Saris watched him with focused observation, not impatience. He found himself looking back at her, noticing the steadiness of her breathing, the slight glow of her markings under the emergency lights, the faint metallic scent that clung to her uniform like ozone after a storm. She finally spoke. "You were down there to repair a conduit." It was not a question. "Yeah," Ethan answered. "The core readings were off. I thought it was a calibration glitch until everything started shaking." Saris folded her arms lightly, not defensive, just thoughtful. "This is the 3rd malfunction this week." Ethan nodded. "I know. That is not normal, even for this old station." Her gaze sharpened. "You believe it is intentional?" Ethan hesitated. He did not want to accuse anyone, especially not with someone like her watching him so closely. "I think something is wrong," he said carefully. "And I think someone knows more than they are saying." Saris considered his words, the faint hum of the coolant line filling the brief silence. Finally, she said, "You need to report everything you observed. You will come with me to security." Ethan lifted an eyebrow. "Am I reporting or being detained?" "You are a witness," she replied, "not a prisoner." There was a subtle shift in her expression, a flicker of something almost human. "If you were a suspect, I would not have pulled you from the tunnel." Ethan stood slowly, legs still aching. "Then lead the way." She turned toward the corridor again, the soft glow of her crest guiding the path ahead. As Ethan followed, he could not help noticing how the colors on her armor, violet, silver, and a faint trace of blue, seemed to move with her, like they were alive. He did not understand why, but something in him felt anchored to those colors now, as if the moment she pulled him from the heat, a part of his future had quietly shifted toward her world. Saris moved ahead with steady purpose, her steps light but sure on the metal flooring as the corridor lights cycled from orange to a calmer blue. The shift meant the reactor pressure was lowering, though not by much. Ethan followed, still feeling the heat trapped in his suit, but grateful for the cooler air brushing against his face. His legs were unsteady, but Saris never pushed the pace beyond what he could manage. It struck him as unusual for someone in security. She seemed trained to move quickly, yet she kept matching her stride to his. They reached a lift that hummed with a soft mechanical tone, the doors sliding open when Saris approached. Inside, the light was dim and tinted with a faint violet glow that matched the colors on her armor. Ethan leaned a shoulder lightly against the wall, steadying his breathing. Saris stood opposite him, hands behind her back, posture formal but not cold. For a moment, the lift was quiet, except for the distant vibration of machinery several levels below. Ethan finally spoke, the words soft. "You always work near the reactor levels?" Her eyes lifted to him, the gold reflections catching the light. "I am usually assigned to upper station patrols, but today my shift was adjusted." "Adjusted?" he asked. Her expression tightened just slightly, like a door closing halfway. There were concerns about the power distribution logs. "My commander ordered an extra sweep." Ethan studied her. "So you really were not down there to look for me?" I did not know you were trapped until your identification signal flared, she said. Then her voice lowered, thoughtful. But I was already close by. Closer than normal. The lift stopped with a soft hiss. As the doors opened, Ethan stepped out with her into a wide hallway lined with transparent wall panels revealing the curve of the station. Beyond the glass, the stars glimmered in cold, steady lines, anchored against the dark. Saris paused for a second, checking the corridor ahead. The soft glow from her crest washed faint light across her jawline, outlining the silver markings there. Ethan caught himself watching, not out of caution, but something quieter. She noticed, not with irritation, but with a slow breath before she turned forward again. You will give your statement in the secondary security wing, she said. It is quieter there. Ethan nodded. Quieter sounds good. They walked in silence for several steps until Saris slowed her pace. Earlier, she said, you mentioned that someone might know more about the reactor malfunctions. Ethan swallowed. He had been hoping she would forget that part. Yes, he said slowly. I cannot prove anything. It is just a feeling. Feelings can be useful, she replied. They can signal patterns before data does. Her words surprised him. Most security officers he had met were strict rule followers, focused only on evidence, not instinct. So you believe me? He asked. She did not answer quickly. Instead, she stopped near a door marked with a soft blue security light and turned toward him. I believe, she said carefully, that you acted to help the station, not harm it. And I believe that what happened in that tunnel was not an accident. Ethan let out a slow breath. He had not realized how much tension he had been carrying in his shoulders until that moment. Sarah stepped closer to the door panel and placed her hand against the scanner. The door slid open with a soft tone, releasing a controlled wave of cooler air. Before Ethan could enter, Sarah spoke again, her voice lower, almost a quiet admission. If I am right, then today was not random. It means you were placed in danger on purpose. Ethan looked at her, caught between fear and a strange sense of comfort at her certainty. And you? He asked. Why were you there at the exact moment the system failed? She held his gaze, her gold eyes steady, the corridor lights reflecting softly across the violet crest she wore. I am trying to understand that myself, she said. But something tells me this is not the last time our paths will cross. Ethan stepped into the room, but not before noticing that she lingered a heartbeat longer than protocol required, as if making sure he was truly safe before she followed. Ethan stepped farther into the secondary security wing, the room humming with low-energy tones that vibrated softly beneath the floor. The air was cooler here, almost crisp, carrying a faint metallic scent that reminded him of freshly cleaned circuitry. A narrow console glowed in the center, projecting soft blue light upward like a quiet beacon. Saris closed the door behind them, the panel sliding shut with a smooth hiss. For a moment, she said nothing. She simply watched him, her gold eyes focused with a mix of assessment and something gentler, almost like she was checking that he was still steady on his feet. Sit, she said finally, motioning toward the console seat. Ethan obeyed, grateful for the chance to rest again. His muscles still felt shaky from heat exposure. Saris approached a secondary panel and activated a recording field. A thin ring of light rose slowly around them, not touching either of them, but creating a clear boundary for the official statement. This is standard procedure, she said, her voice even. Just speak clearly about what you saw. Ethan nodded. I can do that. She tapped a control, and the field brightened slightly. Begin by stating your name. Ethan cleared his throat. Ethan Cole, Maintenance Technician, Level 3. Badge number 47-9C. Saris watched him closely, her posture relaxed in a way he did not expect. Most officers would stand stiff and formal during a statement, but Saris remained grounded, attentive, almost present with him instead of focusing on the recording field. Continue, she said softly. Ethan described the unusual readings, the sudden shifts in reactor temperature, the flicker in the conduit displays. He explained where he was, how the emergency door closed, how the heat rose so quickly that his visor fogged from the inside. As he spoke, Saris made small adjustments to the panel, her fingers moving with deliberate precision. She slowed the recording once, as if giving him space to breathe after a longer sentence. When he finished, she closed the report with a soft chime. The ring of light faded away. Your account is consistent with the sensor data, Saris said quietly. However, Something does not align with the logs. Ethan felt a cold ripple in his stomach. What does not align? Sarah stepped closer, her voice lowering. The system registered a manual override 30 seconds before the malfunction began. A manual override? He repeated. From where? Her expression shifted, not with anger, but with a deeper concern. From the control node outside the tunnels. Someone initiated it and erased the identity tag afterward. Ethan's shoulders tensed. Someone triggered the malfunction on purpose. Sarah nodded. Someone who knew you would be inside. Ethan felt the weight of that settle, not like fear, but like cold clarity. Sarah watched him reading his reaction with precise calm. You understand why that concerns me, she said. You were the only technician scheduled near that sector. Whoever did this either targeted you or wanted the malfunction to look like an accident. Ethan let out a slow breath. And you think I might be in danger? I think, she said gently. You were already in danger. She stepped closer, her presence steady, warm despite the cool air. Which is why you will not walk the station alone until I understand who caused this. Ethan blinked. Is that an official order? No, she said, meeting his eyes with a steady calm that surprised him. It is a precaution. A soft alert pulsed across her wrist device, casting a brief glow across her silver markings. She glanced down, brow tightening. There is another systems fluctuation, she murmured. Minor for now, but I need to inspect the logs. Ethan stood, steady enough to move again. I can help. She lifted her gaze to him, studying him for a long second. You are still recovering. I am fine, he said quietly. Sarah hesitated, the first true sign of uncertainty he had seen from her. Then she nodded once. Very well. But you stay beside me. If anything changes, you speak immediately. Ethan managed a small, tired smile. You pulled me out of a collapsing tunnel. The least I can do is walk next to you. Something softened in her expression, just for a heartbeat, like a ripple across still water. She opened the door, the corridor lights reflecting off her violet crest. Come, she said. There is more to uncover. And as Ethan followed her into the dim-lit hallway, he realized that the steady glow of her colors no longer felt unfamiliar. It felt like something guiding him forward. Sarah walked beside Ethan through the dim corridor, her pace measured, her presence steady in the soft glow of the emergency lights. The station felt quieter now, not peaceful but holding its breath, as if waiting for the next shift in pressure or power. Ethan could sense the tension beneath the metal plating, a faint hum under his boots that had nothing to do with the reactor's pulse and everything to do with the unease crawling through his mind. Sarah led him toward a small observation bay connected to the system's junction. The room overlooked the reactor chamber from a safe distance, protected by reinforced glass that shimmered with static shielding. A soft white light washed over the console tables inside, giving the space an almost calm quality, like a quiet morning before the day fully began. Sit there, Sarah said, gesturing to a metal seat near the central panel. The readings will display shortly. Ethan lowered himself onto the seat, thankful for the support. His body still felt warm from the earlier heat exposure, but the chill in the observation bay evened it out. Sarah approached the large console, her fingers gliding over the interface with careful precision. Lines of data scrolled across the screen, shifting from blue to yellow. Ethan watched her, noticing the subtle way her breathing changed whenever she focused deeply. What are you seeing? He asked softly. She answered without looking up. Another fluctuation, just as the alert indicated. The pressure in the auxiliary conduits dropped for approximately 3 seconds. Ethan frowned. A drop? That should not happen unless someone rerouted power. Correct, Sarah said. She tapped another. Control, bringing up a wireframe of the station's energy grid. Several lines pulsed dimmer than the rest. These sectors are connected to maintenance access points. Ethan studied the layout. Those are restricted sectors. Only senior engineering or command have authorization. Which means, Sarah said, finally turning toward him, someone with authority made these changes. Ethan felt the weight of that sink deeper. Whoever had arranged the malfunction was not a random saboteur. It was someone who knew the systems, someone who understood how to make an accident look routine. Sarah stepped closer to him. I steady. What I do not understand, she said quietly, is why the override happened precisely when you were in the tunnels. Ethan swallowed. It might not be about me. It could have been bad timing. Possibly. she said, though her tone carried doubt. But unlikely. She shifted her gaze back to the console. You told the truth in your statement. I had already suspected that. But there is more to this than a faulty conduit. Ethan's fingers curled slightly against the metal seat. What do you think this is? Saris hesitated, not out of uncertainty, but out of care. She seemed to weigh her words, choosing only what felt fully grounded. I think someone is testing the limits of the system, she said, and using the malfunction reports to mask the trial runs. You happen to be in the path of one of those tests. The idea sent a chill through Ethan. Then I need to stay away from the reactor tunnels. Saris looked at him with a calm steadiness that anchored him. You will not return there unless it becomes necessary. And if you do, I will be with you. Ethan met her gaze, surprised by the certainty in her voice. You do not have to do that, he said quietly. I am just a maintenance technician. You are the only person who noticed the irregular readings before any of the automated systems did, she replied. That makes you more than your job title. The statement lingered in the air between them, a quiet acknowledgement that felt heavier than any alarm. A soft vibration rippled through the floor, barely noticeable, but enough for Saris to stiffen. She raised her wrist device, reading the alert flashing across it. Pressure shift, she murmured. Small, but not random. Ethan stood, the tension returning to his muscles. Where? Saris turned toward the corridor. The lower conduits, she said. Not the tunnels you were in, but close. She paused, her gold eyes finding his. We are going to check it. Slowly, carefully. Ethan drew a steady breath. Then let us go. Saris nodded once, her crest catching the corridor light as she stepped into the hall. Ethan followed, matching his stride to hers. There was something in the way she moved, something rooted and unshaken, that told him he was walking beside someone who would not let him vanish into a tunnel again. And for the first time since the malfunction, the hum beneath the station's metal floor felt less like a warning and more like a path leading them forward together. Saris guided Ethan through the corridor, her steps steady and deliberate as the soft overhead lights shifted from blue to a muted white. The change meant the pressure fluctuations had temporarily stabilized, but neither of them relaxed. The station had become unpredictable, humming with small warnings that might have meant nothing on an ordinary day, but now felt like threads pulling towards something larger. They moved down a gently sloping ramp that led to the lower conduits, a section quieter than the reactor tunnels, but still lined with enough machinery to make Ethan's pulse rise. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of ionized metal and recycled water vapor. Saris lifted her wrist device, scanning the energy patterns along the wall. Golden light from her eyes reflected off the screen, giving her features an almost soft glow. The pressure dip came from this sector, she said. It should be steady now, but the logs were vague. That is not normal. Ethan nodded. The sensors down here sometimes lag behind real-time readings. But this kind of drop should have triggered a full diagnostic. Saris lowered the device. It did not. That alone told him something was deeply wrong. They approached a sealed access panel, its surface brushed steel, smooth except for a single indicator light pulsing a faint pale blue. Ethan pressed his palm near it. This is Conduit Junction 29. It manages distribution for half the residential wing. Which means, Saris said quietly, any interference here would affect hundreds of people. Ethan felt a tightness in his chest. Let me look at it. Saris considered him for a moment before stepping aside, giving him space. Her protective stance remained, not overbearing, just present, like she was ready to steady him if he faltered. Ethan knelt and inspected the lower edge of the panel. There were no burn marks, no loose wiring, no typical signs of mechanical failure. Instead, he noticed something subtle, almost invisible, a faint smudge near the seam, the kind left by a glove or maintenance tool. Someone opened this recently, he murmured. Saris knelt beside him, her presence a quiet anchor. How recently? Within the last hour, he said after a moment. The metal still feels slightly warm from the seal. Saris touched the panel lightly with the back of her hand, confirming his assessment. Then whoever did this is not far. Ethan swallowed, feeling the realization settle deeper than he expected. They could be watching us right now. Saris rose slowly, scanning the length of the corridor. Her posture shifted, not tense but tuned, like she could hear something he could not. Ethan, she said softly, step behind me. He obeyed, though he did not exactly know why. Saris approached the panel, tapping a control to bring up the maintenance log. The display flickered once, then steadied. "There is a missing time block," she said. Someone erased a segment of the log. Ethan felt a ripple of frustration. "That requires command-level clearance." "Yes," Saris replied. "And there are only 6 individuals on this station with that level. Do you trust all of them?" She was silent for a long moment. Then she answered with measured honesty. "I trust their training. But training does not guarantee loyalty." Ethan felt the weight of that answer. Saris turned back toward him, lowering her voice. "You said earlier that you sensed something was wrong before the alarms. What exactly did you feel?" Ethan hesitated, searching for words. It was not data. It was just a sense that the fluctuations were not natural. They changed too quickly, like someone was adjusting the system and waiting to see what would happen. Saris nodded slowly. "That aligns with what the logs suggest." She paused, her gaze grounding him. "It also means your instincts are sharper than most technicians." Ethan laughed softly under his breath. "Instincts did not help me much today. They kept you alive long enough for me to reach you," she said, her tone steady. "That matters." Their eyes met for a moment that felt still. The corridor hummed soft around them. A soft chime pulsed from her wrist device, gentle but insistent. Saris glanced down. "Another shift," she murmured. "Small, but deliberate." Ethan felt a nervous stir deep in his chest. "Where this time?" Saris lifted her gaze to him, her expression calm but alert. "2 levels down," she said. "The primary coolant channel." Ethan exhaled. "That is near the outer ring." "Yes," Saris replied, stepping slightly closer, her voice firm. "And we will go there together." She turned toward the end of the corridor, her violet crest catching the light as she moved. Ethan followed, matching her pace, realizing with quiet certainty that he no longer felt like a technician walking beside a security officer. He felt like someone walking beside the one person who had chosen to save him twice in one day, and who now refused to let him face what waited below without her. The descent toward the primary coolant channel grew colder with each level, the air thinning into a crisp chill that wrapped around Ethan's shoulders through the fabric of his suit. The deeper they went, the quieter the station became, as if the lower rings held their breath, sensing the tension that wove itself into every step he and Saris took. The overhead lights dimmed into a pale white glow that flickered gently, casting long shadows along the metal walkway. Saris walked slightly ahead, not out of distance but protection, her silhouette steady and sure against the muted illumination. Ethan followed close, his hands brushing the railing now and then for balance. The drop in temperature meant they were getting close to the channel. "How far are we?" he asked quietly. Saris lifted her wrist device, the soft golden display reflecting across her face. 200 feet, she said. The anomaly came from a sensor cluster near the coolant anchor point, which is a high-security zone, Ethan added. "No one goes in there without clearance." Saris nodded. "Exactly why this fluctuation concerns me." They reached a wide door marked with a glowing turquoise line, signifying coolant sector access. Saris stepped forward, placing her palm against the scanner. The system whirred softly before recognizing her authority and unlocking the mechanism with a low tone. The door slid open, releasing a faint wave of cold vapor that curled around their legs like mist. Inside, the coolant channel stretched along a raised walkway, illuminated by faint blue strips that pulsed with the rhythm of circulating coolant beneath the floor grates. The space felt cavernous, quiet except for the deep, steady hum of machinery that kept the entire station alive. Ethan stepped inside beside Saris, his breath forming a small cloud in front of him. "There," Saris said, pointing toward a panel halfway along the walkway. Its indicator light flashed an irregular pale yellow, flickering like a heartbeat caught off rhythm. "That is the sensor cluster with the anomaly." They moved toward it, their footsteps echoing softly in the chilled air. Ethan crouched beside the panel, the metal cold under his fingers even through his gloves. He examined the seams, the wiring pattern, the temperature readouts. His breath slowed as he observed the details that most people would overlook. "It was adjusted," Ethan said quietly. Saris knelt beside him. "Adjusted how?" "The locking screws were loosened. Someone removed the interior cover, rerouted one of the sensor feeds, then put it back exactly as it was." Saris studied the panel more closely. "Why reroute a sensor feed?" To hide something, Ethan replied. The system thinks it is reading normal coolant pressure, but what it is showing us is not what is really there. Saris looked at him with calm understanding. Then what is the true pressure? Ethan hesitated, the chill in the air settling deeper as he realized the implications. Too high, he said softly. Higher than the system should allow. If someone wanted to test the limits, this is where they would do it. Saris stood slowly, her breath forming faint vapor in the cold. This cannot be reported without evidence, she said. But if the station's coolant pressure is being manipulated, we must find the source immediately. Ethan rose beside her, feeling the weight of the moment settle between them. If someone is doing this on purpose, he said, they will not stop. No, Saris said, meeting his eyes with a steady softness that held no fear. Which is why we must stop them. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the coolant flow beneath their feet. Then a sudden shift in the air pressure rolled through the channel, subtle but noticeable, like the station exhaled against its will. Saris's wrist device lit up with a warning pulse. Her eyes narrowed. That came from the upper flow regulators, she said. That is close to the reactor midline. Ethan felt the cold settle deeper into his chest. If the pressure spikes there, it will cascade, Saris finished. And the reactor will not stabilize. She turned toward the exit, urgency in her step, but no panic. We must move. Now. Ethan followed without hesitation, matching her pace. And as the walkway echoed beneath their boots, he realized he no longer thought of the station as simply malfunctioning. Someone was shaping its future. Someone was testing its breaking points. And for reasons he could not yet name, Saris had decided he would not face any of it alone. The climb back toward the reactor midline was steeper than Ethan remembered, the incline pulling at his legs and sending a faint ache through the muscles that had barely recovered from the earlier heat. The lights overhead glowed a muted amber now, not a full alarm, but a warning tone the station used when it sensed instability. It added an uneasy rhythm to their footsteps as Saris moved ahead with focused purpose. She did not rush, but every part of her posture said she needed to get there fast. Ethan stayed close behind her, matching her pace even as his breath tightened in the colder air. The corridor widened into a transfer junction, rounded walls lined with pipes carrying coolant and power feeds. The hum of the reactor was stronger here, a deep vibration that thrummed through the metal plates beneath their boots. Saris slowed just enough to check her wrist device again. The readings twisted across the display in flickering lines. The spike is spreading across the regulators, she said. It is not random fluctuations anymore. It is following a sequence. Ethan felt the weight of that, like a chain reaction being guided. Exactly, Saris replied quietly. And whoever is guiding it knows the system well. They crossed into the midline access hall, the temperature warming slightly as they moved closer to the central systems. A faint haze of steam drifted from a vent overhead, catching the light in soft white curls. Saris paused near a sealed hatch, her gold eyes narrowing. This door should be guarded, she said. Ethan looked around. The station felt deserted, like everyone had been quietly moved away from the zone without explanation. Maybe they were reassigned, Ethan suggested, though he did not believe it. We're told to. Stand down. Saris examined the control panel beside the hatch, her fingers brushing lightly against the metal. This lock has been overridden from inside. Someone wanted privacy. She stepped back, motioning for Ethan to stay slightly behind her. The hatch slid open with a low mechanical rumble, releasing a wave of warm air from the chamber beyond. Inside, the midline access node glowed with soft white light, its walls lined with diagnostic panels that blinked in slow, steady intervals. Everything looked normal at first glance. Too normal. Saris moved in cautiously, scanning the room with practiced eyes. Ethan followed, feeling the warm pulse of energy rolling through the air. A console near the center of the chamber caught his attention. Its display flickered between two sets of readings, shifting values too fast to be natural. Saris, Ethan said, pointing. She was beside him in seconds, studying the screen. This is the midline regulator output, she said. It should be stable. It is not, Ethan said. He leaned closer, his breath catching as he recognized the pattern in the shifting numbers. This is the same behavior the reactor tunnels showed before the malfunction. Saris straightened slowly. Then this confirms it. Someone is replicating the conditions that nearly trapped you. Ethan felt a knot form in his chest. They are using the midline to stress test the reactor. Yes, Sarah said, her voice soft but sure. And they are close to exceeding the safety threshold. Ethan moved around the console, checking the lower access port. A subtle warmth radiated from the seam, not enough to be alarming, but enough to suggest recent contact. Someone was here minutes ago, he said. Less than that, maybe. Sarah stepped closer, her presence grounding him. What do you see? Ethan pointed to a small indentation near the port. A reset tool was used here. Someone forced a bypass. Sarah studied the mark. The bypass would allow them to mask the rising pressure until it reaches a critical point. Ethan exhaled slowly. But why? What could they gain from stressing the system? Sarah looked around the chamber, her gaze searching the quiet machines as if the answer might be hiding in the hum of the reactor itself. Power, she said. Or leverage. Or a demonstration. Then she turned toward him, her expression shifting, something deeper settling behind her eyes. Ethan, there is something you must know. He felt. His pulse quickened. What is it? She hesitated, only for a breath, before she spoke. The authority levels required to override these systems belong to high command. But there is one clearance that can supersede even theirs. Ethan frowned. Who? Saris met his gaze fully, her voice quiet but unwavering. My own. The crest I wear marks me as a direct envoy of my house. I carry permissions others do not. Ethan froze. You think someone is using your clearance? Yes, she said softly. Either by forging it, or by expecting that I would be blamed. The air in the chamber felt suddenly heavier. Ethan stepped closer, searching her expression. Saris, if someone wants this traced back to you, then saving this station is the only way to reveal the truth, she said. And you, Ethan Cole, are now part of that truth whether you wish to be or not. The hum of the reactor deepened, a low vibration rolling beneath their feet. Saris turned toward the hatch again, her voice steady. We must reach the regulator core before the next threshold spike. Ethan followed, his heart pounding, the future narrowing into the path illuminated by her violet crest. He did not know where it led, but he knew he would not let her walk it alone. The path to the regulator core narrowed into a long, curved hallway, its walls glowing with quiet white light that softened the metallic edges. Ethan walked beside Saris, their steps steady and in sync, the low hum beneath the floor growing deeper as they approached the heart of the station's power system. The air grew warmer, wrapping around them in gentle waves that felt almost like breath, slow and deliberate. Saris checked her wrist device again, the display reflecting across her silver markings. The pressure is nearing the final threshold, she said, her voice calm but layered with urgency. If it reaches that point, the system will trigger an automatic reroute. Ethan felt the shift in the air, a reroute that could overload the reactor. Yes, Saris replied, unless we override it first. The corridor opened into the regulator chamber, a wide circular room bathed in soft blue light. The main control ring sat at the center like a quiet heartbeat, the coolant lines glowing beneath transparent panels. Everything looked peaceful, calm, almost serene, which made the rising pressure readings feel even more out of place. Sarah stepped toward the center console. This requires 2 inputs, she said. One from an authorized officer. She placed her hand against the interface, her violet crest shimmering as the system recognized her. Ethan approached the secondary panel. And one from someone who understands the flow system. Her gold eyes met his, steady and grounding. You know the pattern better than anyone. Ethan nodded and placed his hand on the panel. The interface warmed beneath his palm, recognizing the command. A soft tone filled the chamber as the system linked their inputs, drawing energy from both sides of the console. The display flickered, showing the rising pressure curve, a slow incline threatening to break its limit. Ethan, Sarah said gently, you will need to stabilize the auxiliary feeds while I reroute the primary line. Ethan focused on the glowing diagram, his breath slow and controlled. I can do that. He adjusted the secondary regulators, lowering the auxiliary load in careful increments. The system responded with a faint vibration beneath the floor. Saris worked in parallel, her movements precise, rerouting the primary line with deliberate care. The pressure curve slowed, then dipped, then steadied. Ethan let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. Saris watched the display, her eyes softening as the numbers settled into safe range. It is stabilizing, she said. We are past the critical point. Relief washed through the room like warm light. But as the system recalibrated, an alert flickered briefly across Saris's wrist device. A single line of text. Ethan noticed her expression shift, only slightly. What is it? He asked. Saris turned the display toward him. The message was brief. Authorization code traced. Clearance origin confirmed. Ethan frowned. Does that mean they identified who tried to cause the overload? Saris nodded slowly. Yes. And the clearance signature was not mine. Ethan felt the tension in his chest release just a little. Then you are not being framed. No, Saris said. But the origin is close to my station. Someone within my command level. Ethan studied her face, noticing the subtle mix of relief and concern. You will have to confront them. Yes, she said quietly. And that will require diplomacy, not force. Ethan stepped closer, the blue light casting soft reflections across her armor. Saris, he said. Whoever tried to cause this, they did not succeed. You stopped it. You saved the station. She looked at him, her gold eyes steady. We saved it, she corrected. I could not have done this without you. A gentle stillness settled between them, wrapped in the hum of cooling systems and the quiet glow of the regulator lights. Saris lowered her wrist device, the tension easing from her posture. Ethan, she said softly, there is one more thing. He waited, heart steady. When I pulled you from the reactor tunnels earlier, she said, I thought it was coincidence that I was nearby. But now I believe it was something else. He held her gaze. What do you believe it was? Saris stepped closer, her voice warming. A choice. And I will make it again. Ethan felt the air shift, not with pressure or heat, but with certainty. The kind that anchored itself without asking permission. The blue lights reflected across her violet crest, casting soft colors along the floor. Ethan stood beside her, watching the glow steady into a calm rhythm. For the first time that day, the station felt quiet. Safe. Saris looked at him, her expression gentle in the calm light. You walk with purpose, Ethan Cole, she said. And today, you walk beside mine. Ethan nodded, the warmth of the room settling into something steady. Wherever your path goes, he said softly, I will walk beside it too. She did not answer with words. She did not need to. The soft hum of the regulator, the calm glow of her colors reflected in the polished floor, and the quiet understanding that passed between them carried a meaning stronger than any spoken line. And as they stood in the center of the chamber, bathed in the steady pulse of light, Ethan realized that the future he had glimpsed earlier, one painted in violet and silver, was no longer just a possibility. It had become the path they were already walking, side by side, toward whatever waited beyond the quiet hum of the station's heart.